Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell. You'll get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And when I'm not asking Bruce, hey, how big was Batista's? Well, you know. One of the things I like to do is help people save money. And if you're watching this video right now and you're in a 30-year loan, man, you're overpaying your single biggest bill and you may not even realize it. I want you to do a little experiment for me. Take your calculator out, multiply your monthly house payment by 360 payments. That's how many payments there are in a 30-year loan. That big scary number, that's your total of payments. You're looking at that number? You know you can do better. Keep more of your own money right now and go to savewithconrad.com. Or maybe you've got credit card debt. Man, it's not a matter of if I can save you money with that. Your average interest rate on a credit card is more than 20%. And by the way, all the interest you pay on those credit cards, it's not tax deductible. Whereas the mortgage interest, well, that is tax deductible. So if you owe this debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. Doesn't it make sense to get the cheapest rate possible and the greatest tax deduction possible? Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. Even scores in the 500s can be approved, and it's no cost out of pocket. But maybe best of all, we're licensed in more than 40 states. We can help more families than ever before. But how much can we save you? Find out right now for free with a quick quote from savewithconrad.com.
Well, he won a gold medal with a broken freaking neck. He's a real athlete, so give him your respect. He's got intensity, integrity, intelligence too. Oh, it's true, it's damn true. So if he ever finds you and you're chanting you suck, then he'll douse you in dairy with his big milk truck. And with one angle slam, he'll lay you out on the floor. So listen up, it's time to go. It's the Kurt Angle Show.
Hey, this is Kurt Angle, and welcome to the Kurt Angle Show. On the show today, we have another special guest and someone who's broken down barriers and opened forbidden doors. But first, let me introduce to you my co-host, Paul Bromwell. How you doing today, Paul?
Kurt, I'm doing fantastic, and my goodness, the string of guests just keep coming, and I am really excited about who we have with us today.
Yes, we have Mickie James. That's right. We're joined here by Mickie James. How you doing, Mickie?
I'm so good. I started to sing my song when I first came in. I don't know if you guys recorded that.
Hardcore
later.
cowboy.
Hardcore cowboy drinks milk.
Hey, Royal Rumble, you got incredible pop. That was amazing.
Thanks, Kurt. You were there. I know. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Sure, you know, there would probably be no hardcore country if there wasn't a Kurt Angle.
Really? Why?
Well, we go back to when I first came to Impact, well, TNA at the time, and I wasn't going to come, and I didn't remember, like, Dixie had you call me.
Oh, that's right.
Times.
Yes, I called you. That's right.
Multiple times to talk me into coming to Impact Wrestling at the time, and it was
my doing.
Yeah, you did it.
That's awesome. I feel good about myself, Mickie.
Yes.
I did something right. Hey, we're going to start with questions. You had an amazing journey in this business, from starting in the indies to reaching the pinnacle. Did you ever imagine you'd accomplish all that you have?
Yes and no. I'm sure that you can relate to this, Kurt, because if you can't envision yourself there, if you can't visualize it, if you can't see it in your eye, then you can't reach it. And that's a form of training for me, that I have to see it. I have to envision it. I have to try to see it. So I've had to visualize myself there to dream of it being possible for me to be there. I don't know if that's a thing that you did for when you've gone after gold medals.
Visualization. Yeah, I did it quite a bit for the Olympics, for pro wrestling. Yes, I did. I imagined myself being in that spot, and that's where I ended up.
Right. You have to see it. You have to see it because your mind is a powerful, powerful tool, right? Like that's where the hardest, I think, work is done, is to train your mind to not doubt yourself, because it's the first things that start to seep in are the doubts, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So yes, but no, in the sense of, like, because there was a lot of people telling me it would never happen, so then those people's opinions would start to filter in, and you would start to self-doubt yourself, and you'd have to go back to, like, no. So yes.
Are you talking about the haters?
All the haters. They love to hate.
Well, Mickie, listen.
Those are what we use for our fuel, is the haters.
Yeah.
It's like I have always said though, it's like it's really hard for people who can't see what their own capabilities. So who can't get past that self-doubt and that self preservation in that sense, to see that possibility for other people. So it's easier for them to discredit people and bring them down to their level because they can't see themselves achieving their own dreams than it is for them to lift them up and also try to go after their own goals in the meantime. You know, that's what I think the biggest thing with the haters. And that's why I feel bad for them, Kurt.
You should.
I do.
Well, listen, Mickie, we're going to actually, Kurt and I are going to walk you through kind of the history of Mickie James, take you on the journey of your career as we go through the questions. So we're going to start all the way back in 2005. And in my research, I came across something that I had no idea about. And that is that you wrestled Bobby Lashley in an OVW TV title tournament in 2005. How exciting is it to see how both of your careers have taken off since those early days?
Unbelievable. I mean, I feel like I first met Bobby in OVW and he came in and he was just impressive right off the bat, right? Like he was just, yeah, that's where I wrestled him, was in OVW, Kurt. And obviously there was a lot that happened prior to that, like, you know, making it into developmental. But yeah, that was wild. But you look at what Bobby's doing now and you look at, you know, my career now, and there was several moments like that where they've kind of, and you look and see all the things we've done since then. And it's pretty remarkable, you know, well, but yeah, he kicked my butt. He fought me like a man.
Who won?
I mean, he won clearly. I should have won though. Let's face it.
You deserved it, Mickie.
I should have rolled him up quick.
Hey, what was your goal to eventually be in the WWE when you first started in the business?
Yes. I think because that's not the wrestling that I grew up on. Obviously because I grew up in Virginia and it was a lot of like Georgia Championship wrestling and
Nice.
NWA and that kind of mid-Atlantic area. However, I think after I'd fallen out and then I come back to fall in love with wrestling during the Attitude Era, when it was cool to be a wrestling fan again. And I remembered all the reasons why I loved the wrestlers that I loved as a child and why that was such a, you know, real passion for me. It was WWF, and I saw the women's championship as like, that's the thing that I would envision. I want to be women's champion. I want to be WWE women's champion. And it was the only title for a woman to hold, to be seen as an equal to a man as far as in a championship, you know, kind of capacity.
Right.
I feel strongly that saving money is important. You know, if it's not something we worry about now, boy, we are really going to worry about it later. And I want to help you get out of debt faster and do it with cheaper monthly payments. I'm talking to you if you're in a 30-year loan. Now is the time to take years off of your loan. We're routinely helping our listeners cut 5, 10, even 15 years off their loan. And you can do this without perfect credit, with no money out of pocket. You've just got to start at savewithconrad.com.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Georgia Championship Wrestling, Mid-Atlantic. I'm going off script here, Kirk, because she mentioned some of my favorite wrestling. Jim Crockett Promotions. I mean, so you were a Horseman fan watching the Nature Boy and all those years?
My dad was a huge Horseman fan. My dad was the wrestling fan, and so was my grandfather. So when I would go to see my dad on the weekends or every other weekend, this was the common thing that my sisters and we would all watch with my dad or watch with grandpa, and they loved wrestling. But it was very old school kind of that style of wrestling, and yelling at the TV just as grandparents do, but then all the things. And so that was my first memories of watching wrestling and the kind of the characters that I fell in love with. But it was also a different style of wrestling in the sense that there was the promos down the lens, and I felt like they were talking to me directly, and I was very intimidated, but also, you know, I really wanted the babyface to kick the bad guy's butt, but I also loved the bad guys. I was a big fan of the bad guys in reality.
That's because you're a heel at heart.
I am. Don't tell everybody though. They all think I'm a babyface.
Well, listen, Mickie, the storyline to introduce you into the WWE was being Trish's biggest fan, and then you became the stalker. But that really put you on the map. How much of that was you? How much of that was creative or Trish? Tell us how that all came together.
I think it was a blend of everybody. It became a blend of everyone working together. Obviously, I pitched the character, and I had written out when I pitched this character like 18 weeks of TV. I was in OVW. You know, it was probably like the 27th storyline idea I pitched for myself to get myself on television.
So this one worked.
This one, yeah, it was. You know how it's like you're in developmental, you're just throwing stuff against the wall, and you're just praying something sticks, and like they might bite on something, and they would come down every so often and kind of do the evaluations. And it was never my wrestling ability; it was always the story that it seemed like that was kind of holding me back. It was also in that era of the divas, and I wasn't a diva. I wasn't the model. I'd been training to be a wrestler for years, so it just. But I pitched that idea with Lita, because I knew Amy. I felt comfortable pitch. I'd asked her if I could pitch an idea for her. I didn't know Trish. So when I pitched it, I originally pitched this character idea based around Lita, but she was a heel at the time, obviously. And I think they saw it around Trish, and I'm so grateful for that, because I mean, she was the golden girl of the company at the time, and that was probably like my 5th time I was supposed to debut as well. So it finally debuted in this storyline that was even bigger than I could have ever imagined, and they put it right with her. So then immediately I was taken seriously as a #1 girl, because I'm aligned with the #1 girl. And this story that they took so long, they actually took the time to develop the character and the person and the thing that really kind of set the stage for the rest of my career. I think it really did.
You said that you had put into 18 weeks worth of a story with this. Was there anything that was left out that maybe we didn't see as fans that didn't get shared as far as that story that you had originally
built?
Probably a
lot. I mean, I think that they might have used like 4 bits of it. They used the crazy super fan part,
okay,
and the boppy and the kind of the personality. There were a few like elements, but the rest we all kind of like. Jack was not in there. Jack was not in the story pitch. There was a lot, and obviously it changed a lot because it was with Trish instead of Lita, you know? Right. So it was obvious. I think it was a blend of Trish and I have really great chemistry, and we just bounced off each other very well. Like I got to know her. I didn't really know her prior to that storyline, but out of that, like I feel like I have one of my most kindred friendships in wrestling now because of it, because she was just so professional, and she helped me in so many ways as far as camera angles, things that I didn't know. But then I also felt like I helped her in the other side of like chain wrestling and other things that she really wasn't her, you know, strengths. And we both really shined out of it. And I think creative, because it started to get over, then creative kind of jumped on board, and it just, we're able to kind of stretch it out and make a lot more kind of cool moments happen along the way.
You defeated Trish at WrestleMania 22 to win the women's title. Can you put into words what that feeling was like?
I don't know the word. I can never explain that word. And I would say if I could have bottled that emotion and just gave it away, like the world would be a happier place. If I could bottle that emotion and sell it, you wouldn't see me again. I would be on a private
trillionaire.
I would be on a private island, and you would have to helicopter in. I'm sure it's similar to that feeling for me, and I know it's not the same, but the only thing that I could relate, Kurt, is like when you won the gold medal, it's like everything that everybody who told you it wasn't possible for you, who didn't believe in you, all the years of hard work of like driving 10 hours for $25 and having to sleep at the rest area and eat a pack of peanuts and a can of tuna because I was broke as a joke, and just to get to this moment of this moment that at times I didn't even feel possible for me, because I started to doubt myself, like all of that to culminate in this one moment to go like it was all worth it, all of the sacrifices, all of the lonely nights of like, you know, having to break away from my friends and my circles so I could grow and do more and be more and break out of the cycle. Like all of it was worth it in that one moment. That was the emotion. And I even get chill bumps to this day, and I get emotional about it just thinking about it, because it was a lot. It was a lot to get there. And obviously a ton of crazier stuff has happened since then, but there was nothing like it. Like even in any championship I've ever won since then, it will never top that feeling, I think, because it was nothing like your first, right? Like,
and at WrestleMania, I mean,
yeah, at the grandest stage of them all, where like, you know, and we were in a singles match as women who didn't happen at that time. It didn't happen
often. Yeah.
It didn't happen very often at WrestleMania. And we had the crowd was insane. Like I just remember losing it at one point in the match, and you can see it in my face when I jumped off like the top turnbuckle with Trish's leg, and then I jumped down, and then I do this scream, and that was a real emotion of scream. Like I was supposed to react like, yay, I got her, and it was like everything I had, because it was real, because the people were just nuts, and you just feed off of it as a performer, right? Like, and it was just it was electric. It was electric. Yeah.
I can't imagine. Did you feel that women in the WWE, after the likes of Trish and Lita, they retired, that they weren't given the proper due like they are today?
Yes and no, but and we say that, but we also created the Melinas and the Beth Phoenixes and those type of characters. I think the biggest difference is, and this is something that's kind of people have mixed feelings and emotions about, is the diva era then came in. And so we had finally gotten to a place where Trish was a household name, where Lita was a household name, and we're taking the power, that kind of element, back away from the girls, from the women, to be a household name. I was like one of the last kind of in that like little bracket, because the girls were that was the last of that golden era that was kind of wrapping up. And I had both of their last matches on TV and pay-per-view, you know, and we were all going to be classified as divas, which meant the merch sales were all divas. So then it was going to be split between the roster. There wasn't really as many like women breaking out to be household names in their own right, because everything was falling under the divas. But it also had this thing of like everything that one girl did then affected us all, because we were all in the same bracket as the divas, you know? So cool things came out of it. There was a reality show, and the girls did really well on that reality show, and that captured a different demographic that weren't watching wrestling before. But then it also kind of think that it took the business back, because people started looking at them as more of a niche again, you know, as like a, you know, novelty thing that the girls had worked so hard to kind of break out of that. Before that, Trish and Lita were the main event on Raw prior to that, like, and the golden era in the sense. So, but wrestling always does that, doesn't it? It does the roller coaster or the Ferris wheel. And now we're in a place where women's wrestling is main eventing the shows again, including WrestleMania. So, you know, I just hope we don't go back down this way again. We can just keep staying up here somewhere.
I don't think so, Mick. I think
Yeah.
you're good. Hey, you had a long-standing feud with LayCool, and a lot of it was based around Mickie James. Was there ever something you were booked to do you weren't comfortable with?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't love the Mickie James angle. I really didn't. I hated it in it. Because I felt like it was, you know, even it was like ribbon on a square, right? Like it was meant to get real heat for Michelle and Layla. And I kind of felt like it was cheap heat, and it was a different way to go. And so in the moment, I was very like, it was torn, but I'm also of the mindset like, okay, they're going to give me this thing that I felt in my heart at the moment, kind of go, they're going to give me this crappy storyline about calling me fat and all this stuff. And I had several conversations with the girls too. It wasn't like the girls were over the moon about doing the storyline either. I think they were heavy in their hearts about it as well. And I'm just going to try to make it gold and try to get these girls over as monster heels, because that's obviously the end result of what we want, is the girls need to get over as monster heels, and they weren't at that time, but they were by the end of it, especially with Vicky Guerrero involved and all of the things. And I felt like it did achieve that purpose. I didn't love it in it. However, the amount of women now who have come to me since then that are now, we're 10 years removed from that story, and said that story empowered them or gave them, because they felt very bullied and it was the thing, it's to do anti-bullying. They felt very bullied, or they were very self-conscious about their weight or their body, and they had body dysmorphia and all these things, that it really empowered them, is pretty remarkable. And I never really thought of it that way when I was in it, but now to be removed from it, and the amount of women, if you can change one person's life or the perception of themselves, then perhaps it's worth it in the end. So no, I didn't love it in it, but now looking back on it, I go like, it was a pretty powerful part of my career that happened. And I know it's like a kind of a mixed bag of how people feel about it, but yeah.
You mentioned that, you didn't love it. Did you feel comfortable enough in those days to have a conversation with somebody, or was it the opposite where you felt like, hey, I got to take one for the team if this one's the company wants? I don't want to risk my position or what I'm doing with the company to have that tough conversation with someone.
I don't. So it's all in the delivery, right? Like I don't feel that I've ever shied away from something if I was uncomfortable with it, or if I didn't really love it. I would express that opinion. I'd be like, I really don't love this. I don't like it. Is there a way to do something? If there wasn't, or if the explanation was kind of given to me and I go like, okay. Or, and if I didn't, and if I realized there was no bending on it, I mean, that goes to even like when Alexa Bliss gave me the Depends and the thing for the old stuff. And I was like, I don't feel like this is good heat. I'm the same age. I'm younger than a lot of men on the roster who are world champ. I'm like younger than half the male roster. There's women on the roster who are a little bit older than me and are just under me. Like, I just don't think it's good heat. I think it's cheap heat, and I don't know what purpose it serves if there's going to be no payoff in the end. So I certainly am not one to shy away from expressing my opinions. If anything, I think that that's why some of, the people in the office actually respect me in that sense, because I didn't just go along or just agree or whatever the case may be. And anything, I at least had the courage, to express my opinion and how I felt about it. Yeah. And speak up and just be honest and that kind of, and transparent about it, but do it anyway. Like I did a lot of things anyway, whether I loved it or not, because I'm like, oh, if I'm going to do it and this is what I got, because sometimes it's, you got to take what you're given. It's your job to make it gold and to do it better than they even anticipated, right? So then,
right,
yeah,
there you go. You had a weird exit, I guess you'd say, within WWE in 2010 when you were released one day before your last match on SmackDown was to air. What do you remember of that?
This is 2010.
2010. That's right.
The weirdest thing that I just remember that day. I'll never forget that day because the day I got released, then they were getting ready to come to Richmond, Virginia. And I had just finished. I'd gotten up at like 4 a.m. to do media for Richmond, to do all the interviews and everything, to do the radio tour and the TV station tour. And I did all of that. I did the whole media tour that morning. And I literally, as driving back home, because I was in the country, I grew up in the country, so I lived in the country, and it was 45 minutes. So on the way, I go like, okay, I'm just going to go to the gym now, because the show was literally that weekend. I'm going to go to the gym now, and I'm going to go tan. And I stopped into CVS real quick, and I went in to go tan. I came back out, and I saw a missed call from Nicole and from Johnny or whatever. I was like, oh, this is weird. I text, I tried to call back, no answer. So I run into CVS, missed the call again. Say I'll call them right back. I just run into CVS to get some stuff for the shows, whatever. I come back out, and that's where I was sitting in the parking lot, getting ready to go over to the gym after doing the media tour. And that's when I got let go. And that's why I never forget it, because I literally just finished doing the media tour.
Oh my God, media for nothing.
You could have called me yesterday. I was more hot about that because I'm not a morning. If you know me, I'm
not. Of course they wanted you to do media.
It was Richmond. It's my hometown. And
they knew they were going to let you go, and they still let you do that media day. You know that, right?
And they took every single Mickie James sign from that show, because there was a lot of them, and they pulled all the Mickie James signs.
That was your hometown, right?
Gotten let go. Yeah, I was pissed. I was really upset. I was more insulted because I go, why didn't you tell me last night? And I wouldn't have gotten up and done the media tour, right? Like, I don't like to get up early in the morning, period. I did this because you guys, I was doing media, and that sucked. And I sat in that parking lot for about an hour bawling my eyes out, because I'd lost my dream.
Yeah.
I'd lost my dream job, and I was like, yeah.
Well, God knows they never figured out how to release you the right way, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
I feel like there's no comfortable way.
I mean, yeah, but this is terrible. That story and what we're about to cover soon. Are you kidding me? My goodness.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, listen, you would go back to TNA and you're immediately pushed into the mix of the Knockouts division. You win the Knockouts title on April 17th, 2011, and you become the first woman to hold the WWE Women's, WWE Divas, and TNA Knockouts title. What does this mean to you at this point in your career?
It was pretty incredible. And this is all thanks to Kurt Angle, right? Because he talked me into coming over there when I was like, I'm so sad about wrestling. I don't want to wrestle anymore. I can't believe it. And so I do appreciate that, Kurt. I really do. I know we talk about it, whatever, but it really did change because I could have given up at that point, and I was very, very sad, and I was in a dark place about it. And I think that had I not come to Impact or come to TNA at the time and been able to create Hardcore Country, but also to believe in myself again, because there was a whole period of doubting myself in that, and just to take my power back, it was what I needed at that time. And then I was able to do something completely different and away from everything that the WWE audience knew about me, but they then fell in love with this other character that was me and was closer to me, so it was cool. Yeah, it was cool.
Well, the company books you in street fights and cage matches during your run. Do you think TNA took women more seriously than WWE at the time?
Oh, absolutely. I say the knockout, because they were given more opportunities and they were given, longer segments and television. I've always felt like the knockouts have been booked correct. Like they were doing women's wrestling correctly before it even was a hashtag or a trend.
They were ahead of their time.
Yeah. They were way ahead of their time. You go back, if you talk to Lisa, Tara, Victoria, she said that was one of the reasons why she wanted to go to Impact in the first place when she first left WWE, is because of the things that the women were allowed to do over there with Gail and Kong and, even the OG knockouts. And I think back to even when I was at TNA, back when they were still at the fairgrounds, and I was doing the first woman to ever do the Clockwork Orange House of Fun match against Jeff Jarrett, who beat the dog crap out of me like I was a man, and all of these things that I was able to do there that were never thought of possible for the women in WWE at that time, except for maybe a one-off way down, like a every now and then. But yeah, I was able to have a cage match with Tara as the main event of Impact, a double segment main event of TNA at the time. And
that might have been the first ever, Mickie.
That may have been. I don't know if it was the first ever main event, but it certainly was I remember I dove off that cage and I was terrified. I didn't realize how high up it was until I actually got up there, and I'm like, whoa.
And Kurt does moonsaults off the top of it.
Unbelievable. I don't know. I don't know how you flip backwards without freaking out, period.
Hey, I couldn't see anything. That's why I went backwards.
Yeah. It's like the nesty plunge kind of like free fall. You just got to trust that person. I did trust Lisa. I don't know that I would have done that on anybody, but I did trust Lisa.
What are some of the highs and lows as you think about that run, that time in TNA there?
The highs and the lows in the sense of
just yeah.
Go ahead. I feel like and because we could talk about mental health now, I think that a young, very, I was very devastated after being let go from WWE, and it took some healing time out of that. And I think I was going through those emotions as I was also cultivating and getting these opportunities as Hardcore Country, Mickie James. So there was definitely some learning curves. Obviously the money was different, however, the power was different in the sense of I had more control. I could make my own schedule. There were less dates, so I could focus more time on my music, which I was only dabbling and playing in when I was on the road with WWE. Like I wrote a few songs and I cut that first album, but that was really, I thought, was more of along the lines of, I just want to do this thing because I've always wanted to do this thing. I didn't think I would have a music career out of it. And I wouldn't have had time to pursue a music career if I hadn't gone to TNA at the time, because their schedule was much lighter and you were still getting to tour and travel in all the towns. And I was able to do a lot of those pre-show parties and attach my music to it. So we would do like the post show, after the show, we would have a music show, and I was able to perform in some of these towns. And it was really cool to have that cross promotion and to be able to write my own entrance music and all the things. So it was just like a lot of opportunities that gave me a lot more options and gave me my power back there. And I think it gave me my confidence back, because it, you know, because then you're your own boss again and not being told and dictated kind of what to do and where to be and how to be. And, you know.
Well, what brought you back to the WWE in 2016?
You know, I feel like I was kind of done wrestling. I was thinking about like whether I was going to retire. I'd had Donovan. Nick's career was really like, he was kind of cultivating and really starting to kick off on his career. And I felt like I'd had such an amazing career at that point that maybe it was time for me to just sit back and let him go and let him shine. And then I could raise my son. I hadn't been home in a long time, and I could start focusing on other things of like, not just being there for him, but also my horses and, you know, the music, but also just kind of like maybe a normal life, you know? And what was next. And I'd done some tryouts as far as like, you know, I toyed with being a coach at NXT. I talked about coming back to Impact, but it really wasn't in my heart, because I felt like I didn't really know, you know, I'd had a weird angle when I left there the last time. It was like James Storm killed me off and pushed me in front of a train. And there was like just weird things, like a lot of weird things was happening there. And I was like, I'm just not feeling it. And I said, I think I'm just going to retire and just kind of do it up. And then that's when, it's just ironic, because that's when they called me about coming in for a one-off. Hunter called me about coming in for the one-off against Asuka. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've been praying for a perfect little button on my WWE career, because I felt like I had unfinished business there and I didn't love the way that I left. This is the perfect like little, before I retire, the perfect like little button, the perfect little send off. And I was in England. We were actually headed to England when I got the call, or like when we kind of started making the plans and stuff. And yeah, and I just took the opportunity because I wanted that button. Like I wanted that little bow to kind of go like, okay, this is my send off from WWE. Now I can kind of wrap up the package and it's good and it's fine. And I trained my ass off for that. And I wanted to, because I knew Asuka was the girl that they were going to be pushing soon to the moon. And they were already pushing her huge. She was undefeated at the time. And I wanted to just deliver for myself, because I was coming back from having Donovan and as a wrestler, and I'd only been really doing a few independents at that point and signings. And so I wanted them to see me as, you know, Mickie James, the Mickie James that they remembered as much as possible, and to give Asuka a hell of a match. And that was my ultimate goal. And that's kind of what we did. But then they asked me out of that if I wanted to come back full time. And I was like, we had just
ready for that question, huh?
Yeah. It's, what are you going to say? No. And the weird thing is like, because I had started to plan for retirement mode, we had just up and moved to Florida, away from all my family. So I was going to be more at home with D, and Nick was going to be traveling more, obviously, with NWA and with everything that he was doing. But I would still do signings and appearances here and there, but it was just more kind of, and I'd move the horses down there and everything.
Oh,
and then they called me back,
and you had to move back home, right?
It lasted like a year, because Nick had to take over when I was on the road, because you know how involved the WWE schedule is. He started having to clean the stalls every day for me and stuff like that. And he's like, this is not what
he's shoveling shit now. You're back to wrestling.
What the? I didn't
your horses, Mickie, your horses.
This is horse shit.
Well, listen, you said you wanted to put a bow on it. Mickie, you took the bow and you untied that bow. You wrestled Asuka at NXT, and it segued right into the main roster with you and a few with Alexa Bliss. Your career is completely rejuvenated at this point, right?
I know. It's insane. It's insane. It was cool. And it was cool because Alexa was like, you know, to be aligned with Alexa, because I knew that they had big plans for her, and she's so fun. And she was, you know, she was really cool. Just, it was fun to work with her. And I feel like she was very open to like just different things for me and ideas and just my input. But it was also, I think that she has a whole different audience than myself, because it's a younger demographic and very like in that cosplay kind of thing, which is not wheelhouse or realm at all. So it was to see our personalities and just like the, like a old school versus new school kind of team up. It was different because they hadn't done it. And it was fun. It was fun. And we had a lot of fun. And I just enjoyed, like, it's the locker room for me, and it's the boys and the girls there. And I felt like I was just taking every moment because it was something that I didn't think was going to happen, as a blessing, and just enjoying it for what it was and for however long it lasts. Because I'm like, I had hoped for, and I wish in hindsight that I would have pitched more, try to push more for the hardcore country character, because it was something that I brought up there that they just never really understood or bid on. But it's almost like a blessing in disguise, because had they bid on it, I probably wouldn't have been able to come back and do this thing at the Rumble and it go down the way it had. So everything happens for a reason,
You're absolutely right, Mickie. Did you know when you first got in the ring with her that Becky Lynch would be the star she is today?
Yes, and I would say yes and no. You know how some people just have a quality about them that is so unique and so different. And I remember when I saw her, when I went down for a guest spot.
You mean her accent?
Yeah. Well, she was doing the obviously the last kicker and stuff when I first came up there, but she's just morphed into a mega star now, and it's crazy to see. And it's crazy to see a woman in that position, which is awesome. So kudos and hats off to her, because it's freaking cool. But I remember seeing her at NXT back when I went down there just for like a training camp thing, where I was as a guest coach for like 2 weeks or something. And I was like, I kind of saw it then, and like, this girl really has something. But she was just new there, and she was like brown hair and completely different than what she looked like now. But she just has like a certain charisma about her. And there's sometimes these like little things like that, like you just can't teach. So people just have it or they don't. And you can kind of see that spark in their eye, or that spark in what they do, that they were meant for something, and yeah, it's cool though. I think it's what a phenomenal kind of thing to be able to do, is to be the catalyst of like really looking at. It's one thing when you're Ronda Rousey, and I love Ronda, don't get me wrong. It's one thing when you're Ronda Rousey and you're walking in here and you're being leveled up to being the top star, because you are a top star in your own right, because you busted your ass in this other thing. It's another thing to see, especially as a woman, to step up and be seen in that top star kind of bracket through the wrestling world, through what we do, because it's a
lot of hard work, and she had to earn it, right?
It's a rarity for male or female to level up to that kind of bracket. It's a rarity. So to see her be able to do that, and to do it for, the girls, it's pretty freaking cool. And I'm always going to support my ladies and lift them up. So, plus she just had a baby, and what in the entire hell? I'm so mad right now. Like, I worked hard. I felt like it took me an entire pregnancy to get back to where I felt halfway decent in a pair of spandex. But I saw her
You did in a few months, right?
Unbelievable. I'm irritated about it. I'm irritated at Rhonda about it. I said, it's been 4 months and she came back and she looks incredible too. And I'm like, I still felt like I looked pregnant 4 months after. So
they're a different breed, Nick.
I know. Unbelievable.
Well, let's talk a little bit about you and Kurt Angle. You were drafted to Raw when Kurt was GM, and he immediately named you the #1 contender. Kurt, that was nice of you.
He loves me.
He's my girl.
I'll tell you what, you're taking care of her. And you took on Bliss for the women's title at TLC. Were you happy to see the WWE take the Divas name off the title?
Yeah. I know that I think this is a polarizing subject, because there's a lot of people like, oh, they love the Divas title, right? Because it was, but we'll go back to the breakaways. That was my only kind of real negative about the Divas era, is that I got into the business to be a star, and I wanted Mickie James to be a star. And I know it's a selfish business, and I know it seems selfish to say, but I didn't necessarily love all the other girls in the locker room, so I really didn't necessarily care if they were stars too, except for when I had to wrestle them, because you're only as good as the person that you're in the ring with, right? So, and we all came from different backgrounds, and it was also different because we're all fighting for one position at that thing. There's one title, right? Whereas now there's tag team titles and two titles for each brand and all these things. So there was it was a lot more competitive, I think. So I was happy I was happy to have the Divas name, because I felt like it came with a stigma to those who didn't understand. Like, if you are a first time viewer and you're like, oh, they refer to themselves as Divas, some people liked it, some people didn't, but it also came with the stigma of, like, when you think about what the term diva means, it means that you're pretty snooty and stuck up and sure of yourself and you're extra and you need everything on your rider. You're extra, right?
That's right. That's right.
And
you're a handful.
A lot. You're a lot. And I felt like that, and then that came the, perception that we were a lot and that we were drama and that we were all these things. And I was like, I just wanted to be one of the boys and to be looked at as equal as one of the boys. So I felt like it just made it that much harder to be seen as one of the boys, because you're seen as now one of the divas and you're a diva. And so, but I also recognized the amount of good work the Divas thing did, in the sense of the younger demographic and the little girls. Kurt, you're a girl dad. Like, it gave little girls something to look up to and aspire to that was marketable, and that they could understand, and that they were like, I want to be a diva. Like, I didn't think about that wrestling brain and even marketing brain until after, when I started to, really study business and hone in on that stuff. And I go, like, it actually was very marketable. It actually targeted a whole new demographic of the girls who are now wrestlers today, because they wanted to be a diva, which is weird to me to say, but that's the reality. Is a lot of girls that are wrestlers and very good wrestlers today fell in love with it when
they were diva fans. Yeah.
Right. So some people love it, some people hate it, but it did do a lot of good. It really did. And
Well, you got the team with Alicia Fox at Evolution to take on Trish and Lita.
Foxy.
What was the feeling like to be on the very first all-women's pay-per-view for WWE?
It was incredible. I think the energy that night was so special, because all the girls were so excited that we were going to have this one night. And I think we all had hoped that it would be the start of something really cool, and, like, whether it was an annual event or something that we could do more often. But we all wanted to prove ourselves as, not only worthy of this one night only kind of thing, but the hopes to prove ourselves that, it would be cool enough to continue to do, and
you being one of the better wrestlers, did you feel a lot of pressure for this pay-per-view?
I certainly did. I think that every woman felt a lot of pressure, because we had to deliver, because we were finally getting a space that we had asked for.
No safety net.
Yeah. And we all wanted to deliver, and we wanted the pay-per-view to deliver, because we wanted to be able to do it again. And the only way we're going to be able to do it again is if this was a massive success, and if every girl went out there and treated it like WrestleMania. And that's what we did. I felt like every single match, like, we just went out there and gave it our all, and it was so fun. And I was grateful to not only open the show, because, the opening spot is I either want to be first or last.
Yes.
First or last.
Once told me the most important spot on the card is the main event. Second most important is the first match of the night.
You set the pace for the rest of the show. So, that's what I've always been told too. It's like, you first or last, right? It was so cool, and to be able to be in there with, Alexa, who had been on that, since I first came back on the journey with me, but also my friend Foxy, who was my ride or die travel partner and who I adore to pieces, but also against Trish and Lita, who are so, have so much history in my own career, and who means so much to me on a real personal level. Like, to be able to share that moment with them, with that whole collectively, it was really, really cool. It was really cool. And the crowd was so hot, and it was so fun. And we just went out, we just weren't lost in it. You get lost in those. Sometimes in matches, you just get lost in the emotions and the feelings and the people, especially when they're hella hot like that. And that was one of those times.
You forget they're not real.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Wait, it's not real? Wait.
Breaking news here on the
Breaking
Kurt
news,
Angle Show. Yeah. Well, listen, let's talk about something that's not so cool. And that's when you tear your ACL in 2019. Did you think, hey, this is it? Could be the beginning of the ending for my career here, my run in WWE?
It was my first real injury, I think, aside from I've had some stingers. I mean, I've separated my shoulder, I've separated both of them twice. And the other one I separated once and broke it, the collarbone, and I've had fallen on my head and stingers and couldn't turn my neck and all the things. But that was the first injury that sidelined me to the point of I was going to be out for 6 to 9 months. And it was
time.
And that's a real, especially I think we're so stubborn in wrestling. All of us, we don't like to accept help. We don't want to lean on people. We don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want to admit that we're vulnerable and that we need other people. And this is even in our own relationships to my husband, who, it was hard. It was hard to feel weak and vulnerable, and also uncertainty is not something that I'm very good with. And I felt like, at first I felt like it was already uncertain anyway, because I had just gotten it was the draft and I wasn't really doing a whole lot on Raw. I just got drafted to SmackDown, never debuted on SmackDown, was just kind of hanging out, waiting for creative to figure something out or whatever it was going to be, hanging out, doing my Instagram lives from catering. And I go to Waco, Texas and wrestle Carmella in a house show in front of, 1,000 people. And that's where I tear in my first house show event of SmackDown after being drafted, which I hadn't even debuted on television yet, over there. So it was discouraging. It was like all of this, what is happening right now? On such a good note of all these good things happening. And then this happens. And it was also in the midst of a personal stuff happening between my sister being sick and just a lot happening in my life. And I honestly, now looking at it, go this was my reset button of my reevaluation of what I'm going to do and how I value myself and what do I value most in my life, kind of thing. I think it was a necessary thing to happen because I had to sit back at home and I was trying to figure it out and what I was going to do next, and talking about moving behind the scenes and being more of a producer role. But I also wanted to end my WWE career in a cool way to have a button on it, because I just didn't want to be this ACL tear be the last thing that I did, and then all of a sudden I just kind of move into a commentator position or whatever. And I hadn't trained or really didn't know commentary, and it's a hard job. So I had to, try to study to try to do that. And I'm a perfectionist, so I want to be great at whatever I do. I don't want to be mediocre. So it was frustrating. It was a lot of things of just testing the waters and seeing if there was a different way that I could show that I had value, forgetting the fact that I'm Mickie James and I'm fine, it's all the things, plus the rehab alone of being injured and then having to do all I had no idea that an ACL was so important, and that the injury and then the rehab coming back was going to be so painful and so long. When they told me 6 to 8 months, I was like, you guys are insane. I'll be back in 3 months. I'll be fine. I'll be fine. And it's no, it's still my hamstring, because I took the graft from my hamstring. My hamstring still to this day is not as strong as my other one. It's still not the same, it's just weird. But I'd never experienced that until that moment. I go, this really sucks. You really are floored. I really have this brace on for 6 months. I'm stuck. I'm really stuck. What am I going to do?
And yes, it is.
Yeah. And bored out of my mind, bored.
Oh, Mick.
I had to call Johnny. I said, you've got to find something for me to do. I'm going to lose my mind. And that's when they decided to have me do commentary.
Were you in Virginia or were you in Florida at this particular?
I was in Virginia and Nashville. We were back and forth because my sister was also very sick at the time. But we had sold the house in Virginia we were looking at properties in Nashville. So we had a townhouse in Franklin, outside of Nashville and Franklin, while we were house
So
hunting.
you didn't have the horses at this time.
No, I was boarding them still in Virginia, but I was also, because I would travel back and forth so I could help take care of my sister. And then, so I was traveling from the road to Virginia, back to the road to Nashville, back to the road to Virginia.
Your ACL injury.
For about
What a pain in the ass. Wow.
Yeah.
Was Nick still shoveling shit while you had the knee brace on?
No.
No,
No.
she boarded the horses.
That's right.
I
That's
did.
right.
When we moved back to Virginia and I was on the road full time, it was like, as we do, we had to make some adjustments and we had to compromise on a few things. So the horses were no longer on the property with us and they went to a boarding stable where someone else was cleaning the stalls.
Well, that's good.
Now they're back on the property with us now that we're in Virginia. We bought a new house and I love it so much.
You're
Thanks
pretty
to
happy
Conrad and his team. But we have the horses on the property and he does go down and clean the stalls every now and then when I am on the road.
That's a good man.
He is
What a good
man.
guy. That's good.
Yeah. It was just when it became like all the time. And he's like, I didn't sign up for this. This is not my thing. I like the horses, but I like to pet them and feed them carrots. I don't want to clean up poop.
I don't blame him.
Yeah.
Hey, you competed in Elimination Chambers, Royal Rumbles, and even was part of the Legends Night in 2021 on Raw. What was the highlight of that run?
I think now looking back at it, I think the biggest highlight of the entire run was realizing what a difference I made to the girls in the locker room. And like when a Sasha or Bailey would ask me my opinion or appreciate my opinion and say how much it meant to have me in the locker room with them, and how they wanted to wrestle me. And it's like, I thought that sometimes they were joking or, it's hard to take a compliment. I'm not very good at it. So I think that was because you always want to feel like what you've done is of service and of value and that it was appreciated. And we're not always made to feel that way. Sorry, I'm getting emotional. So stupid.
No, you deserve it. It's true.
But when they would come to me and say these things, and it would really touch my heart because it does mean they're the future of the business and they're setting the standard of the females to follow them and males to follow them of people who idolize them. And so for them to respect me and hold me in that high regard and to realize that and to be in the locker room with them, that it was special to them, it really humbled me in a lot of ways. And so a lot of times, like, even though I was not perhaps booked in the most best of ways, I loved being there because I loved the fact that they looked at me in that capacity, if that makes sense.
I'm going to just chime in here. So I've been able to work with Rebel and Serena Deeb lately, and we've talked about the Royal, yes, and we've talked about the Royal Rumble, and both of them said the highlight for the Royal Rumble was the women's match and was watching you and you come out. And Serena D put you on her Mount Rushmore later on in the conversation when they asked about women's wrestling.
She deserves to be on the Mount
your
Rushmore.
impact is greater than and you're talked about in circles from other women's wrestlers when we have these Zoom events and things like that. And so I don't even think you fully comprehend the impact that you've had on women's wrestling. I just wanted to share that with you as you were talking about that.
Well, thank them both for me. I mean, I love Rebel. She's amazing. I love her so much. She's so sweet. She's always been so supportive. And Deeb goes all the way back to OVW because I remember when she first moved there from Virginia. So that's kind of why I fell in love with Deeb from the get start, is because she's a fellow Virginia girl and it kind of took her underneath my wing. And also gave her my ID when I left the state of Kentucky, of Louisville, so she could use it as a fake ID. And I think she actually used it for a fake ID.
I love this.
Up until maybe like a month before her 21st birthday. Sorry.
Why?
You just outed her right here on the Kurt Angle show. There you go.
I apologize. Yeah, well, you could go back and ask her. Yeah, she had my ID for a long time and I was on the road and I forget who finally took. It was like a week or so. It wasn't very much until her 21st birthday when they realized, and they look at the name and they look at her and they look at the name and they're like, this is not you. And she's like, but great. She used that ID for a long time. But I remember when she first moved down there and she trained to be a wrestler. She up and moved to Louisville to go to OVW to start training classes in the beginner class. And I've just watched her grow and all her whole journey since then. And it's pretty incredible. She's got her own story, and I love her, and I have nothing but love and respect for her. And I sincerely believe she's one of the best wrestlers in the world. I really do.
She's kicking ass now, but they love you and respect you. So I just wanted to share that. Now listen, we're getting into it now. You're released in April and make headlines when you tweet about your belongings being mailed back to you in a trash bag. We've all come to know it as Trash Bag Gate. This led to some house cleaning in the WWE Talent Relations Department. Did you think that was going to be the result when you tweeted about it?
I did not. Of course I did not. I mean, if you know me, you know I have a very sarcastic sense of humor. I was annoyed as I'm walking out the door. It was a very crazy day in a nutshell. And I was in the middle of 10,000 things and walking out the door to my photo shoot for the Grown Ass Woman single cover that at Chapel Hart. I was going to meet them so we could go shoot the cover. And I saw that one of the boxes arrived. I actually got 2 boxes. And I saw one of them arrived, and I know what's in my drawer. So I know it's jackets, it's all my things. And I'm like, oh, it's all TV wear. So I'm thinking like, oh, I wonder what's in this box. I can take it as extra stuff to shoot with, like whether it's a cool jacket or something. And then I open it, and that's what I see. And I'm like, of course. And so I take a picture, and then I'm too annoyed to even open the bag at that point to look through it to see what's in there. Cause I'm just like, I gotta go. Because I didn't want to you have to be in a headspace for photo shoots for the most part. And I didn't want to be in a bad one. And so I just kind of was like, screw it. And then I left, and I drove down to Nashville, and then we ended up shooting and starting the shoot and doing all the things. And then halfway through the photo shoot, like we take a break and like a makeup touch up and a wardrobe change. And I realized that my phone has blown up, and it's blown up from people's text messaging to calls from Johnny and Hunter, and Stephanie called me, and Vince had called me, and I only called Vince back. I think I text Stephanie back, and I text Johnny back and said, I'm in the middle, like because I'd paid for the session, right? Like it's like you're paying for so I'm like, I'm in the middle of this. So I called Vince back in that break, which I needed. And it was great to have that conversation with him, because it was stuff I think that I needed to hear and I needed to say. And, he apologized to me then, and he kind of had let me know, but I had no idea that it was going to get the press or the steam that it did, because I think that we're so used to being offended in wrestling with the amount like things that we've done and gone and done through. And I mean, to me, I'm like, I've done an angle as Mickie James. People have kissed ass on television. Like, this is not the most offensive thing that's ever happened to me in wrestling, is getting my stuff in a trash bag. Like, yeah, I was annoyed about it. Yes. You don't even realize how offensive it was until you step back and you go like, actually, if it was any other company or corporation or anything like that, it would be a big freaking deal. And it was a big deal, and it will never happen again to anyone in any company. I don't think that anyone should be be made to feel like a zero or, in any capacity. And I think that it does, especially when we start to talk about mental health, and that's such an open conversation now, that you think about, not only is it the message that it sends to the talent, but if you're already in a low place, like 2010 Mickie, when I got my stuff in a garbage bag, it was the knife in the gut. Like, it was the salt in the wound to something that was already very devastating. And it took a while for me to go like, okay, I'm not trash. Or I thought, oh, they think I'm trash. Oh, this is devastating. I would have never posted it then. This Mickie James in 2022 or 2021, I guess, doesn't care as much, you know what I mean, about what everybody else thinks. And I did it more to pop myself and more to throw shade and to kind of be like sarcastic and be like, a sideways kind of, yes.
Okay, stick it back then.
Yeah.
And it did way more, but I am great. I don't regret doing it, because I know that nobody will be ever made to feel like 2010
right.
James.
Never again, right?
Changing the culture. That's right.
It was devastating. And I don't want anybody, especially now, and it's a very sensitive time. And I just don't want people to feel like that, because when you lose your dream, it's already hard enough. And they don't need the salt in the wound of being made to feel like they're garbage on the way out the door. It's not okay. It's not okay. And so I think for the company to stand up and recognize that, it sucked to have, Mark Carano, who I considered my friend, like in talent relations, and I've known Mark for a long time. It sucked that he was the one, you know, and he got released on it, and I kind of felt weird about that. But at the end of the day, he was the one who did it, and I wasn't the only one, and it had happened for at least 10 years that I know of, and it only happened to the female talent, because the female talent typically is the ones with the drawers, because we have to have more options than the guys to wear for TV. And yeah, it's wild. It was wild, but it was a blessing. But then coming out of that, then to be able to, I think that's another thing why the Rumble was so special too, because at least for me, because I think that a lot of people that overshadowed that trash bag moment, really overshadowed, not in my eyes, but I felt like more people remembered that than they did that started talking about the WrestleMania match, or retiring Lita at Survivor Series, or the first ever Falls Count Anywhere match with Melina, or the fact that I beat Beth Phoenix for the first time the women's championship had ever changed hands overseas, and when she was undefeated. Like, the trash bag became bigger than all of those things, and that I felt like wasn't fair to myself, to my career, but more importantly to the women who I had all of these moments with, and it just, so it was a weird place, right? So as soon as I got an opportunity to be able to change that, it was like, yes.
Get even more from the hottest new podcast going, My World with Jeff Jarrett, over at adfreeshows.com. Let me get granular here for a minute, folks. Not only can you get the entire My World episode library with 0 ads, new episodes come your way each week early, ad-free, and on video starting at just $9 a month. We've also got tons of exclusive My World bonus content waiting for you, plus unique interactive experiences with your old pal, Double J. You get to jump on and ask Jeff questions, and if you joined us in Chicago this year for Top Guy Weekend, you got to hang out the entire weekend. 100% the best value in all of wrestling. Strut on over to adfreeshows.com right now to sign up.
Well, you've been a major part of NWA and Impact since you left the WWE. How big a deal was that to your career's legacy?
It was a big deal. I think it was huge. I have to say I'm so grateful for Billy, because I think that in Power, like, especially after leaving and realizing I was kind of in a juxtapose of like what I was going to do within WWE, and I really had a lot of conversations with a lot of people about doing an all women's brand, or trying to do Evolution 2 or something, or like maybe a show that's kind of inspired out of it, or something just more in line with the women, and kind of nobody really got it, and they just didn't bite on it. And so since that was like the most of my conversations, and it was like I didn't want to come out and just kind of come back and start wrestling on the indies again or do any of that. And I was like, I really want to put all my focus on women's wrestling and what I can do to elevate that. And so Billy gave me the platform with NWA, and gave me the control, and gave me the power, and said, here, do it with me, and do it here. And I think that alone, the faith that he put in me, gave me the faith back in myself. And I put everything into making that pay-per-view a success. And I didn't care. I didn't want to talk to anyone about wrestling. I wasn't trying to wrestle until I made this a success. And then I could talk about wrestling. Like, then I would think about it. And so all of my energy and all of everything went into that. And it was massively successful, whether monetarily or not. It was massively successful in the sense of like breaking down that barrier, and as well as like that women's wrestling would draw, and deserve to be at the top of the marquee, and could hold its own in its own kind of right in a larger corporation kind of capacity, other than WWE's version of it, of Evolution, which was incredible itself. But yeah, I think in that, and building off of the relationships that I already had, and being able to work with Impact, because Impact let me do weeks of television to build up to it, which was really cool. I couldn't have asked for, much more than that from them, but to be able to build to that match. And I think in those conversations, it's like, well, okay, so they're doing a lot for me to make Empower successful. So I want to do what I can to kind of give that back. And the opportunity to come back and be a hardcore country again for one last run or whatever that is. And then in my wrestling career, since I really hadn't wrestled since my ACL injury, the way that I want to, if this is the end, which is not the end. I'm not saying that, but you never know.
Well, that's what you've done. You have really elevated and drawn attention to women's wrestling, whether it was Empower and the pay-per-view, what you're doing with Impact. But I need you to walk us through your experience and your appearance at Royal Rumble. Are you contacted by WWE? Does WWE go through Impact? It's a fascinating story. Can you share it with us?
It is. It's pretty fascinating. It's pretty incredible that we were able to pull it off and put it all together. And Johnny reached out to Scott D'Amore first for a company to company standpoint to see if it was going to be okay, if this was something that they were interested in having, you know, some of their talent on the WWE Rumble. And I think Scott then, obviously he's like, well, that's not really, I mean, yes, it's okay. I'm open to it, but ultimately it's not my decision. And, you know, so when he approached me with it, like I said, like I wanted anything, I'd prayed for something to be able to kind of like take back over whatever it was to end my career there on a positive note and a positive thing to remember me by. And, so as soon as he called me, he's like, hey, do you have any interest in this? And I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, I do. Actually, I really do. And I said, I want, but what I really want is to be able to present hardcore country to the WWE audience because they've never seen her. And I've known the whole time. I really wish I would have been able to do her there. They didn't understand. I want to present hardcore country to the WWE audience because I know that they will love her and it'll be so over. And obviously I was the Knockouts champion at the time. So, and I still am. And so I was like, and Scott's like, well, if we get the belt on there, that would be really cool. I go, hell yeah, that would be cool. I was like, and then we started looking and go like, when's the last time the belt's been represented? And I'm like, yeah, I'm the champion. First off, I'm hardcore country and I need to be who I am right now in relation and not Mickie James, the legend, WWE legend with my obsession music and the bell bottoms, but who I am right now that's relevant to television right now. And I'm the champion. And when's the last time this is done? We talk about doors and ceilings and windows and all the things like this could be monumental. It not only does it do really great business for myself, but it does great business for Impact Wrestling and it does great business for WWE. And now it opens up the eyes to fans who all thought that this was going to be impossible to ever have dream matches of their favorite WWE superstars against some of their favorite superstars of other organizations. They go like, oh, actually, this could happen. Like we were just fantasy booking before, but this could potentially really happen. And that was really cool. And I think I couldn't have done it like without, you know, obviously my relationship with Johnny and my relationship with Scott and the fact that they trusted me enough to know that I was going to hopefully represent it the right way. And yeah, it was a lot of excitement, but also, as you know, I was like very anxious and nervous because a million things could go the other way. So I couldn't celebrate until after it was over. Now that it's done with and I'm through it, I feel like I can celebrate. But the whole time leading up to it until my music actually hit and I'm walking out there with the belt around my waist, I'm thinking about, okay, I'm just going to keep it positive, but you know, what if they play the wrong music or what if they say, oh, you can't go out with the belt now, we changed our mind or whatever. But I will say it took a lot to get to that agreement to go like, this is what I want in order to make it happen. Like, this is what I would really like in a perfect world. And I was expecting to get no's on a couple of them. And Johnny said, okay, well, let me go talk to Vince. And he did. And Vince approved everything. And he came back and was like, Vince is excited to see you. Can't wait. It's
awesome.
going to be amazing. And I'm like, holy shit, what is happening? This is wrestling right now. I can't believe, like, I was in shock. And I think I was still in shock up until as it was happening. And I'm like, this is really happening. I was so fired up when I went out there because I could, like, I'm like, yes, it's really happening.
Some have said that was the closure for Trash Bag Gate. Do you believe that in your mind too, as a, hey, we did you wrong when you left, this is our way of
I'm sure that there is an element to that, and I feel like, you know, it was a way to put respect back on my name because they felt like, you know, that perhaps they had disrespected it. And there hasn't been a conversation with anybody internally where they haven't apologized for that moment. Good. And I know I never once felt like it was a deliberate attack against me of like, oh, we think you're garbage.
No.
I think it was just a thoughtless act. It was just, that's just it.
But they wanted to make up for it a little bit.
Right. And
Yeah.
and you know what? If it was that, then thank you.
That's
I'm
right.
fine with it, because I felt like I needed that. Like I wanted that. I wanted that for me. I wanted that for my career. And I wanted that for my fellow females that I'd had all this awesome things with, and yeah.
Well, your music career has been a major part of your life for over 10 years now. Having Hardcore Cowboy play at the Royal Rumble had to be a thrill. And I want to tell you, these fans knew it was you.
I know.
They popped right away.
Hardcore country.
So these WWE fans, they obviously watch Impact Wrestling too, am I right?
They do. Yeah. I think it was a lot of shock value on a lot of levels, because as many people who were excited that I was going to be in the Rumble, there were just as many, if not more people on the other side of it going, there's no way that she's going to be hardcore country. There's no way they're going to let her, they're going to talk about Impact Wrestling. There's no way they're going to refer to her as the Knockouts champion. There's hell no, are they ever going to let her walk out there with the Knockouts world champion? You guys are smoking crack if you actually think that that's ever going to happen, right? Like there was so much, I was like, wow, wow, really? And not them knowing that we had already, and I never once said ahead of time, like, yes, I am absolutely coming out there to my music and with the championship, because I didn't want to look like a liar had something happen ahead of time where a thought or a mind had been changed. So I always said that I intend to, like, my intention is to walk out there as the champion. My intention is to walk out there as hardcore country. But I never said I'm actually, 1000% doing it, because I didn't, what if something went wrong?
Never know.
Yeah. And it all happened, and I knew in my heart. So as people were saying these things, I'm like, well, I know in my heart that Vince has agreed to all of this. So the only way it's not happening is if he changes his mind. Right? Like that's the only way it's not happening. And so my whole thing was like, please don't let him change his mind. Like between now and then, but I never was like, hey, screw you guys or anything, because I just was waiting. And so there was layers to the reaction, because I feel like people heard the music and they're like, oh crap, they used the music. Holy crap, this is cool. And then I'll do the jacket, and then they're like, holy crap, she's got the belt. And then at the end of like because it was huge, there's like 40,000 whatever people there. And then so not a lot of people could see. So then when I got to the end and held up the belt, the people who didn't see me wearing it down the ramp because then see me holding up the belt. And so then there was another reaction like, oh my God, this is happening, So it was cool. It was cool.
Yeah, I mean, Impact was on the graphic with your name.
It was.
I mean, it was all, they did it the right way.
Champion. They just say Impact Women's Champion. It's world, but that's okay. I'll take it.
That's right. Beggars can't be choosers. That was good. What you got. That's right.
I'm grateful. I'm grateful.
That's right.
Grateful.
So you're going hard with Impact Wrestling. You're doing your thing with the NWA. You're crushing it with GAL TV. Talk to us about what else you have going on, because I know you got stuff going on with legacy supplements, and I mentioned GAL TV. Tell us and our listeners about some of the things that you have going on in your life right now.
Well, GAL TV, we started in the middle of the pandemic with SoCal Val and Lisa Marie, who I talked about earlier, but it's so fun. It's just wine, conversations with wine, not always wine, because not everybody drinks, but usually just like locker room conversations of what the girls' locker room kind of conversates about. So it's so fun because we can cover wrestling and non-wrestling. We've had an array of guests on. We're actually filming with one of our biggest guests yet tomorrow. So I'm very excited. It's a surprise. It's a surprise. But yeah, Nick and I started Legacy Sups in the middle of the pandemic too, which obviously Nick is obsessed.
Yes, he is.
He's obsessed with health,
fitness, bodybuilding, health. Yes.
It's like he wrote a book about it. Like he really is like, he keeps me up on stuff. Right. So we originally started the men's line at the beginning of 2021. And then after I got let go, we opened up the women's line, the Her Legacy Sups, and now we have a CBD line and we have a wellness line with like greens and reds and all this stuff. So it's just grown so much. Like it's crazy to think since the pandemic started, but like it's doing really, really well. So we're very proud of that. And I've been working on a new album, which I have, you know, been writing the whole time during the pandemic, and, you know, we'll one day decide which songs are actually going to go on it if I'm, you know, ever satisfied. But yeah, so I've been working on that and just life. And I'm just trying to be the best mom possible at this point and really give Donovan, you know, someone to be proud of.
I think you're a great mom, Mickie.
Thanks, Kurt.
You're a great woman. Great
You're a
individual.
good dad, and you're a
the
great
best,
man.
Mickie.
What a
I really
legacy.
mean it.
No, I love you so much.
I know you
Kurt
do.
has always been so kind to me, and so like even in the moments of like when I doubted myself, and I'll say this, and I'm so grateful for you, because I really believe that had you not called me on the phone to say Dixie really wants you to come to TNA, like please just consider it. I'm telling you, I'm having a great time over here. You're going to be able to make your own schedule and you're just going to love it. Like you said, it's great friends here. It's a great locker room. Just trust me. And you called me more than once. And I don't think had you not called me and talked to me and just like really had that conversation of in that, where you said the same thing of like, I don't think that you realize like the impact that you've had, and you really are one of the best female wrestlers out there, which is something that I always wanted to be. Like it was be looked at by someone like yourself, who I admire and respect so much as an equal, as one of the best out there. It really meant a lot to me, and it really changed because I was willing to walk away at that point. And I think about how different my career would have been, because I probably would have, because wrestling and people are crazy, I would have walked away for like 2 years, and then I would have kicked myself and gone like, why did I do this? And then I would have been like starting all over again and trying to do the indies or something just to, you know, relive my wrestling glory days. And I owe a lot to you. I really do.
Oh,
And
Mick,
you've always
I
been
always
very-
thought you were the female version of Kurt Angle. You know that, right? You remember I told you that.
That's big. That's big praise. That's
massive.
That's
It's
awesome.
massive. We're gonna have to one day hit that double ankle lock.
Yes, we do.
Yes.
We'd have to do it. Who would be a dream match? Roman Reigns, and who would be the woman?
Oh gosh.
Sasha or Becky or Charlotte?
Yes. Well, we'll get everybody in there. We'll just ankle lock
Mickey
everybody.
versus Roman.
I
and
know
Charlotte.
it's so hard. I always say Charlotte, but Becky is so huge now, and Sasha obviously, or Bailey.
can't go
ankle
wrong.
lock- I'll ankle lock. Like Bailey's coming back from an ACL injury too, so there's the heat. I'll ankle
You're
lock.
gonna re-injure
crap
her
out of her.
ACL, huh? That
No,
is
you're
awesome. Hey, Mickey, I want to thank you for coming on the Kurt Angle Show. I really do appreciate it, and I wish you continued success in the future. I love you, honey.
I love you so much. Thank you, Kurt. I
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Mickey. Appreciate it.
Thank
All right, take care, hon. Love you.
All right, you're good to go. Thank you so much, Kurt. Wow, what a guest, Mickie James, another fantastic guest here on the Kurt Angle
She
Show.
was a great guest too.
Yeah,
Very, very insightful. I mean, she has her stuff together, huh?
well, that, and she's just very, she was very talkative, and she, again, another guest, Kurt, that just thinks a lot of you. And I never knew that story about how you convinced her. And it's something to hear her talk and say, hey, if you hadn't called me, Kurt, if you hadn't picked up that phone and encouraged me at a time when I was down, when I was not feeling it, who knows how her career, and we just talked to her about being in the Rumble, dude. So that's big impact, man.
You know, it was crazy because Dixie Carter said, do you know Mickie James? And I said, yes, I know her very well. She said, I'd really love to get her on my roster. She just got released. So I said, I'll call her right now, boss. And I called her. And that was the beginning of it. And it was awesome. I mean, Mickie came in and she made a huge impact in Impact Wrestling. And she continued her career and did incredibly well.
Well, she was a fantastic guest, Kurt. Thank you so much for reaching out and getting her scheduled for us. This is what you can come to expect this year on the Kurt Angle Show. We had Miro, we have Mickie, and we're not done. We're just getting started. We have some fantastic guests scheduled for March, and I'm really excited about it. But Kurt, we're going a little long today. It's been fun, but let's get into some of the stuff that we like to talk about at the end. And I know you love to talk about physicallyfit.com. Look at you. You're shredded, and there's a reason why.
Physically Fit Nutrition. These are chicken snacks and Snack Smart crispy protein bites. There are 11 different flavors. They're all incredible. Sour cream and onion, sweet barbecue. These are just a couple of them. You go to physicallyfit.com to order yours. And if you use the promo code AnglePod20, you get 20% off your first order. Or if you go on the website and you become a member for life, you get 20% off forever.
Man, that's awesome. They are great. I've ordered them, and I tell you what, they're great snacks. They have the flavor. They got pizza, sour cream and onion, buffalo wing, you name it. There's not a flavor, a cinnamon swirl. So if you'll have that sweet tooth, you have the cinnamon.
They've all, all the ratings so far have been all 4.5, 5 stars.
Can't beat
every
it.
flavor. Yeah.
Angle Pod for 20% off. And then Kurt Angle brand is also where they can find you and get some fun swag there as well, right?
Very affordable too. Nothing's expensive. Everything is set for a certain price so everybody can afford it. I got photographs, I have milk cartons, I have birthday cards, cowboy hats, t-shirts, cameo video messages, you name it. Go to kurtanglebrand.com to order yours.
Finally, Kurt, wildcatbelts.com. I had someone reach out to me directly, Kurt, and I put him in touch with Wildcat asking about that belt. They want to be in the group, one of the 5. You're one of the 5, I'm one of the 5, and they want to be part of the group for that belt that you hold in your hands right there. It's an amazing Kurt Angle American Hero Championship belt. They are limited, only 5 made. So make sure you get yours. And you can see pictures of it on Wildcat's Facebook and Instagram. Follow the Kurt Angle Show at The Angle Pod on Twitter and Instagram. And you can follow Kurt, the Olympic gold medalist hero himself, on Twitter at Real Kurt Angle or on Instagram at The Real Kurt Angle. Kurt, man, this has been another fun show. And I can't forget Wives of Wrestling. They will kill us if we don't talk about that, right?
My wife and Kim Orton are doing an incredible job with the Wives of Wrestling podcast. They just released their first episode last week. I believe their second episode was just released this week.
That's right. It's out. And I think she's in the room looking at you right now saying, you better talk about my show, Kurt.
Hey, I'm doing it right now.
Listen, this has been another fun episode. We hope you enjoy it. We'll be back again next week for another fun show. But with that, we're going to wrap it up. He's Kurt Angle, your Olympic gold medalist. I'm Paul Bromwell, and we'll see you right here again next week on the Kurt Angle Show.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.